If you're thinking of getting married or even living together, what are the important questions we should ask first before leaping into a lifelong commitment with your perfect partner? Well, my first guests believe the signs of success or the failures of long-term relationships are there early on if you just ask the right questions. And they actually wrote a book. It's called Marriage Minded, 10 Ways to Know If You Found the One. Chelsea and Nick Hurst are big social media influencers known for sharing the evolvement, if you will, of their relationship on YouTube. More than 2.4 million people have been watching their engagement, marriage, and then the incredible footage of the live birth of their baby, Hudson. Take a look.
Oh my gosh. Hi, sweetie. Oh my goodness.
Wow, when two become a three. Well, Tam Fam, please welcome Nick and Chelsea Hurst to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, we're so excited to be joining with you guys. Watching back the tapes just now.
Makes us emotional.
I know. It must be so emotional to see it. I should tell the Tam Fam you were supposed to be in studio, but it's because of the baby that you're not here. The baby got a little sick and you had to be on parent patrol.
He did, yes.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but we're just so blessed to be here. And I was just telling Nick, I'm like, I always love Tamron's outfit, so I just got to say about it.
Well, thank you so much. That is so sweet. I got to tell you, I love listening to our audience and them respond to topics. We were showing members of the Tam Fam saying the things they wish they knew before they got married. And I was thinking to myself, how would I answer that? Because there's so many things, Nick, on that list. And that list changes depending on who you are and what your needs are.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's different for everybody. I think everybody's list will probably inevitably look a little different about the things that you prioritize. But we had those things that we wish that we had really known, and we wanted to collect them in really one documented place and share them with the world in hopes that they could really benefit our generation and generations to come.
Well, it's interesting you say generation because, Chelsea, you are 24, Nick 25, I'm 52. I didn't know what I wanted until I was 48, so that's why I didn't get married. So people will say to you, wow, you're too young to be, Chelsea, giving advice. Even though what works for you guys work for you. How do you answer that?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question, but we just love the fact that our generation is so vocal in what they believe and like not allowing age to hold you back, because I think our generation has certain struggles and difficulties that future generations and even former generations can't necessarily relate to. And so we wanted to be a resource that actually felt tangible, like we were holding the hands of our generation, and that they weren't alone in the midst of those struggles. And so trust and communication and secrets. I mean, there's just so much to talk about, and we just wanted to put it all in place. And we really wish we had this before we got married.
Well, I think that's true. It's like there are generational differences. Obviously, you have to deal with the pressures of social media and the world we live in today that did not exist, obviously, when your parents probably tied the knot. But the reality is there are some, though, universal things on this list. No matter your age, no matter your socioeconomic background, no matter when you are looking for the person that you are going to take this huge leap of faith with, whether it's in a marriage or living together, there are some common threads, which you write about, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely. Trust, like we mentioned a moment ago, secrets, emotional health, communication. I mean, there is just an endless list of the things that are truly long-standing that aren't necessarily tied to one specific generation, but that, like I said, are long-standing. But then there are those nuanced things like that are relatively new, not necessarily new.
I think our generation has a really hard time communicating with one another because we really put up almost a wall with all of the technology that's in front of us. I mean, I go out to dinner with Nick, and we're really intentional about not touching our phones during that dinner time and even putting our phones up to sleep.
I love that. So Nick, that's something I wish I'm addicted to my phone, not necessarily social media, but I've worked since I was 14, and the idea of waking up and having me miss work emails, I sleep with my phone in the bed between me and my husband. I know. And I bet he wished that he knew that. Poor Chelsea, she's about to fall off the seat. It's a true confession. I sleep with my phone in the bed. I've now slowly started to put it on the nightstand. But I'm sure he, thank you. Thank you. Up next, how do you know if your partner is the one? Chelsea and Nick reveal the question to ask when we come back. Don't go away. Welcome back. Today we're talking with dynamic duos and why their lives are better together. And we're back with husband and wife sensation Chelsea and Nick Hurst. They're influencers with millions of people following them on social media as they share each step of their lives with the world as a formidable twosome. So we are back. The book is in my hand, Marriage Minded, 10 Ways to Know If You Found the One. And I'm going to read quickly just some of the things on the list here. Can you communicate? Does pride get in the way? Can you trust each other? How do you view money? Do you know their family? What about sex and purity? Can you enjoy a life together? How do you handle secrets? What about your emotional health? Are you spiritually matched? So what now? I love that follow-up chapter, all of that. So it's a great list. I want to toss to, we asked Chelsea and Nick for our Tam Fam to send us some of the questions. I have our first person here, Carell from NYC. This is her question. Let's play it.
Hey, Chelsea and Nick. I love my boyfriend, and we talked about getting married multiple times, but every time we get into a disagreement, he gets really quiet, and we just have trouble communicating. Is this a deal breaker?
Whoa. All right, Nick, that's the first on your list. Can you communicate?
Yeah, great question. And honestly, this is something that I even struggle with myself, to be transparent. Getting quiet around arguments or disagreements or even spat. This was, something I really dealt with. And it wasn't because I was just tucking myself away and secluding myself. It was really because I just didn't want to say the wrong thing. And so what Chelsea and I did, this is the only experience I can speak from, is what we have done. But what we did was sat down, had a conversation, pointed out tendencies that we were noticing in one another in a very kind and loving and endearing way. And we just said, hey, we think that there's a better way that we can go forward and communicate well whenever one of us are maybe upset or we're having an argument. And there's a way that we can deal with whatever it is that we're arguing over and not make one another our enemy.
I love that you do that because, Nick, we have that in common. As much as I talk on this show, when I am upset or when something has gone off, I go inside. And I surprisingly, believe it or not, I get really quiet. And my husband has to pry things out of me. So he is that person who initiates exactly what you said. In fact, this is so weird. My dress today says one kind word. Ironically, I had no idea when I wore this, but we try to sit down and say one kind thing before launching into the list of things that I don't. But it sets off the conversation of dialogue. Chelsea, let me play Christina from Montreal, Canada. Here's her question about trust. Take a listen.
Hi, Nick and Chelsea. I've been cheated on in my past relationships, and in my current one, I have trust issues. How can I move on so one day I can get married?
That's a tough one. I mean, trust is established in your book as a part of that 10 that you need to ask. How do you deal with that, Chelsea?
Yeah, so Nick and I actually sat down and I realized that I was struggling with something very similar to this woman, and I was projecting my past hurts from the relationships that I was in previously onto Nick. He had no idea that that was why I was behaving the way that I was and struggling to trust him. But that genuinely, I just didn't know how to heal from the past. Wow. But I would say if you recognize that about yourself, like that there's some healing that needs to be done, like do that intentional work, because the person that you end up marrying should be able to trust fully. And I think that's one thing that you and I worked on really well. And I'm so grateful for his grace in the midst of me figuring that out. Sometimes you just don't. Where's this coming from? Like, is this childhood trauma? Is this things that I just don't even know how to deal with? And I think that's where honestly, like professional help can really help a lot.
Yeah,
too.
make a difference.
I think that's a beautiful answer. Let's go to Isabel from Toronto, Canada. She's got a question about finances. Uh-oh, let's listen.
Hey, Nick and Chelsea. So my boyfriend carries a lot of debt and he's really bad at managing his finances. I would love to marry him, but I'm on the fence because of his spending habits. I would love to resolve this, but I'm not even sure where to begin.
Well, Nick, so according to statistics, money is the second leading cause of divorce behind infidelity. That's a tough one.
Yeah, it is. And money is one of those things that's really touchy. It's really personal to a lot of us, whatever our financial situation might be. But in this particular case, I would probably just say that a lot of communication needs to happen. Because anytime that something is not being communicated about, there are very unclear expectations and things are just fuzzy. And so the best thing to do, the kindest thing to do is to communicate about it. Figure out what your goals are. Figure out where you're wanting to go. Is that somewhere you're wanting to go together? And I would say get into alignment sooner rather than later so you can map out that goal wherever that may be, wherever you are wanting to go with your financial future, so that you can both be on the same road and work together rather than separate.
I have to tell you, though, Chelsea, listening to her question, I got butterflies in my stomach because how does she go to this person, right? Presumably, as she said, she wants a future with him. And are you essentially saying, lay out your bank receipts, lay out your credit? I mean, this is not an honor system because once you're in it, you're in it. And so there has to be honest receipts, I think, to understand where each other are financially.
Yeah, exactly, Tamron. I think one of the things that people like really miss out on is just the honesty process in that. Like, if she really wants to be with him, like, lead with that. Say, I love you. I love our relationship. I think the one area that you and I can just talk about more and kind of set goals for is this is a hang up I have. I honestly do not want to walk into a marriage with you with us having to deal with so much debt or really just disagreeing about how to handle money, because that's kind of a hard, rocky place to start a relationship off on in like a committed way. And so I would just say, like, address it head on and lead with love, because she loves him. It's easy to just kind of let that be your tone if you truly desire to be with them.
But I will say it's also very easy to let it go under the rug because you love someone, because you care about them. Like, oh, it's okay, it'll work itself out. If it's not addressed, it rarely ever works itself out. So deal with it.
And the audience agrees with that. And I mean, to your point, Nick, looking at the list that you have, many of these things, people might feel like, oh, I'll just sweep it under the rug. For example, question number 6, what about sex? I mean, people don't have, first of all, I don't know what to ask, and I don't want to know what you ask each other. It's not that show. But it's one of those conversations, Nick is blushing. It's one of those conversations that you can easily sweep under the rug, but you'll have to deal with it later, as I feel most of these are.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is one of those really big things that a lot of couples just kind of like try to figure out as they go. But I really honestly believe with just about every single question, every single point in this book, that the more that you can do on the front end, I mean, this goes into the really impetus of why we wrote the book. Like, we want you to be prepared ahead of time rather than fumbling with this and trying to figure it out later down the road. And so when it comes to this conversation of sex or purity, we are both Christians, and so we both walked into our marriage with the understanding that, hey, this is something that we want to wait on. This is something that we really care about, and this has the potential to really bankrupt a relationship if it's not addressed and talked about and come into alignment and agreement really early on with